This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
It's tournament time, and I don't mean basketball. It's tournament time for Kentucky schools which wave the banner of archery. We go inside outdoors to find out more with the National Archery in the Schools program. Kentucky State Coordinator Patrick O'Connell and the national organization's president, Roy Grimes, are both my guests. We'll find out more about how this Kentucky-born sports activity is hitting a bullseye worldwide. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
At the absolute worst, it was a little white lie.
A little white lie.
After all, when it hit the line, it felt like a 15-pounder. It doesn't matter what the scale says. So it might be an ever so slight deviation from the truth.
Sometimes in fishing, the truth is hard to catch.
Maybe just a stretch.
But the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, fishing isn't about math. It's about fun.
And fudging a little if you need to.
Kentucky Fishing.
It'll make a liar out of you.
Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. You see it as a contribution option when you prepare your state tax return. But you also see it as songbirds and wildflowers. You can see it in clear, flowing streams. Sometimes it's so secluded you may never see it at all. But if you only see it on your PC as you prepare your taxes, that's good too. Google it and see the difference this fund makes. Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. The natural tax shelter.
You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. In the studio with me is Patrick O'Connell. Patrick, you're with the National Archery in the Schools program. Now, you're the new state coordinator. Welcome to the position.
Thank you very much.
The National Archery in the Schools program is a subject we've had on this program before, and Kentucky has been instrumental in it. It's not the Kentucky Archery in the Schools, but it's national. But Kentucky figured into this prominently for, grades 4 through 12?
Correct.
For archery competition in their local school system. And it's really turned in to be quite the hit. What's the minute message with how Kentucky has taken something from, dare I say, a summer camp program and turned it into something so popular?
I'd say the minute answer to that would be that very short, early into this program, we realized that, number one, the kids love doing it. It's an activity that just draws them in immediately. Secondly, we found out that the days they started having this in their gym class, they started coming to school more. The attendance was higher, so they enjoyed it enough to stay in school. The teachers and the principals noticed that, and that's what caused the program to spread so quickly.
It engaged the kids. Have you been a part of this from the earliest days of this program in Kentucky? How long have you been a part?
The program actually started in a small phase in 2001, and I was thinking back the other day, I believe it was sometime in 2003 when I actually got involved. I've seen it really grow.
This is something that engages children. If you're on the basketball team, if you're on the football team, if you are a cheerleader, and you are a part of something and you're excited about that, and you want to go to school, and you want to do the practice, and you want to participate. And for a lot of kids, that opportunity was not there. And this gave them that opportunity to be part of a team, to be part of something that was beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, you have kids yourself?
I've got a son who is 16, and he started on the program when he was in 6th grade and really loves it, continues to shoot all the time, and is part of his high school team right now. My daughter is 12, and she has a problem getting in front of other people, and I'm still trying to work her into this as a way to be more comfortable in front of other folks, trying to explain she's not the only one out there.
Dad said be comfortable. No, be comfortable.
That's right.
But you've been a part of it. Have you seen... And we consider and talk about how it changes the lives of kids, but have you seen it in your own home?
I have. My son was actually a little timid, I guess, and kind of quiet, and he really took to archery, and he did it well. He actually did it, is one of the better archers on his team, and I actually had a custom bow. I took 2 or 3 Genesis bows and took them apart and put them together in a unique color configuration just to give him a unique bow. And that, when he walked into practice, all the kids were going, wow, that's awesome. And that brought attention to him, and then he was successful shooting too. And it's really helped him grow as a person.
In short, what you're saying is now archery is cool.
Archery's cool.
And it made him cool, made him stand out.
Oh, yeah,
That's
definitely.
cool.
There are hundreds of stories around this state where it's happened.
You're the state coordinator. You are the second on a very long list of state coordinators for Kentucky, the second. The first was your predecessor, Jenny Richardson, who was with this program from its inception until recently, and she has gone on. Do you know exactly where to?
If I know her, it's got something to do with kids. She is so passionate about this sport and about children, so I can't imagine her not tying the two together.
Most people that are involved in archery in the schools in this state know that name, and we wish her well in her new role. Nonetheless, you're the guy now. So this came about this past fall. Were you anticipating this, or did that phone call come and say, Patrick, we want you to pick up the reins and move on? How did it come about?
No, actually not. I had no idea she was retiring. I was quite surprised when I heard it myself. I don't think I was even in consideration for this position at the time. I'm not sure if they had someone in mind, but when I heard it was available, I said, wow, that's something I could really throw myself into. I went and talked to the appropriate people about it and sold them on the idea, and here I am.
Now, Patrick, this is interesting because what coaches in schools and a ton of student archers out there don't know about you is something that I do know, and it's something I think is pretty cool, because part of the success of this program comes from you, in part, through software writing. I'm going to call you a computer nerd, a whiz kid. If the program on my laptop does not work, you're the guy I could call to come in and rewrite the code. Easy stuff for you. You think that way, but it's light years beyond any of my abilities. But that's what you did early on with NASP, was write registration and scoring software that has tremendously eased the paperwork load for everyone. I mean, this is worldwide, everyone involved.
I started out at the department as actually an information technology programmer. I wrote software. NASP came to us back in 2003, I guess it was, and they had held the first couple tournaments, and they were using spreadsheets and writing it down and sorting everything together, and they knew they could never grow the program using that type technology. They wanted to grow it bigger and make their award ceremony faster. So in an effort to do that, they got with Matt Quarles, who was my supervisor at the time, and me and Roy all together. We came up with a scorecard, a scanner system, and then the back-end software to support the whole scoring model. And since then, it's moved to online registration and lots of other good things.
You mentioned the name Roy. That is Roy Grimes. Roy is the president of the National Archery in the Schools program, and he'll be joining us in the next half hour. And I look forward to talking to him, too, because he, too, was instrumental in getting Kentucky as the first player in this game. So it's your baby now. Let me just ask you, what have you inherited? I'm wanting to know the size of the program, number of kids in the schools, number of schools. It's a state full. It's a big plate you have to have.
It is. I don't have the exact numbers on the number of schools in Kentucky, but I think it's somewhere around 17 to 1,800. And our last count, we were at over 1,100 schools that already have the program in it. So I'm starting out with a program that is so well established, and I'm blessed to have a program that sells itself. I mean, once a school gets it, you can put one program in one little area, and before you know it, everybody's got it because they see the benefits and the advantages of having the program. So it's a self-selling program.
We're into the part of the year now where we're looking at regional tournaments. Coming up in March will be the state championship. You have a national in May, world championship this summer. So it's a pretty big deal. But those early regional tournaments are starting to take place pretty much as we speak. When we come back from the break, Patrick, I hope you'll stay. I want to know more about what these regional tournaments are about and what a student archer has to do to excel, to keep moving himself, herself through the ranks. I'm talking to Patrick O'Connell, the new Kentucky State Coordinator for the National Archery in the Schools program. He's with us for the full hour, and joining us in a little while is going to be Roy Grimes, who is the president of the entire National Archery in the Schools program. This for the nation and the world, and we'll be getting his thoughts on how this program is growing nationwide, worldwide. We're up against a break. My name is Charlie Baglin. More in a minute on Kentucky Afield Radio. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. We are talking to Patrick O'Connell about archery in the schools. Schools as in Kentucky's public schools. You probably know somebody who shoots a bow and arrow. You probably know somebody who is a part of their school's team. That could be elementary. It might be middle school or high school. But Kentucky has quite a few. And Patrick O'Connell is in charge of the entire program across the state. We have one thing that stands out to me, Patrick, is that elementary schools, middle schools, high schools don't often have a sport or a sport activity they can engage in that has a national champion or a world champion. Are you aware of any others that go to that length?
Actually, no. Probably the closest thing to it would be like the Little League World Series, something like that, but that's not offered as part of an in-school program.
That's what I thought, the World Series in Little League. But National Archery in the Schools, it truly does have a national and a world champion. Do you have to win at one to advance forward in the other? I know we have the Kentucky State Championship just ahead in March. Now, to get there, what are student archers doing as we speak? As we speak
right now, they're starting out now with local fundraising tournaments almost every weekend. The competitive schools are out there just about every Saturday shooting in somebody else's gym.
So in these local tournaments, just how large are they? Just a few, or is there more than that?
We have local tournaments with over 500 shooters at this point that show up. We had two recently, only two counties apart. One had 400, the other one had 480 just in that two-county area. So it's really growing quickly. After that, they actually moved to a regional tournament series. We have 14 regional series tournaments scattered across the state. The tournaments will take place between February 8th and March the 2nd. And then that's how they'll qualify to move on to the state tournament.
Does archery in the schools have a season? Does it have a schedule, as we would know, basketball season, that this weekend, Trigg County is going to play Marshall County? Is archery at all configured that way, or is it how do you compete?
Right now, we do not have a series where School X plays School Y on a specific schedule. Like I said before, the majority of the folks that compete competitively find other invitational tournaments to go to on different weekends, and that's how they shoot.
The biggest competition is going on now, the regional tournaments. So forgive me if you've said it, but in these regions, Kentucky is broken into how many regions?
Kentucky has 14 different regions.
And in each region, there's a certain number of schools. I guess that can vary.
It varies greatly. Some of the numbers we're looking at right now, our smallest regional tournament is about 300 kids. And the most recent number I heard from our largest, it may be as large as 1,200 archers in that regional tournament.
The smallest is 300.
300.
The largest is 1,200.
Right.
That gives you an idea. Does that compare with the number of kids who would try out for any other activity that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, but it's almost not a fair comparison because we include so many more than most of the other programs. We run 4th grade through 12th grade, so most of the other programs are a high school league or a middle school league. So we have a larger audience.
Okay, so now you have anywhere from 300 to 1,200 spread across grades 4 through 12.
Correct.
The winners of this regional tournament system, they are the ones that move forward to the state championship?
Right. The first place teams and the top 5 individuals in each gender and division category automatically move on to the state tournament. And then from there, we take the best teams, the remaining best teams based on score from the regions.
And the state tournament is coming up in March and will be held, where is that held?
It's at the Convention Center in downtown Louisville.
Downtown Louisville, you'll have kids from as far away from Pikeville to
Ballard, right?
From east to west.
Right. All
converge on Louisville. It's got to be quite a thrill to compete. This isn't like a basketball tournament, and I'll make the comparison, and I hope fairly, because we have grown up seeing that you start off with a bunch of teams that whittles down, you finally got 2, and they play for the championship. Not necessarily in archery, though. You have everybody competing virtually in the same day.
Correct. Yeah, we'll have a little less than a day and a half of shooting in our state tournament.
And you'll have any idea how many kids will be showing up for the state championship?
We're anticipating about 3,200 kids this year.
3,200. 5 times the amount of the first state championship. I'm thinking there was 600 back in 2002 or 3.
Somewhere along those lines. The first state tournament, I think they said it was just kind of off the cuff, and it was only the first 10 or 20 schools. They had 60 kids there. It was in the middle of the summer at the horse park in Lexington.
So you'll have these 3,200 kids, and they will be participating in the state championship. You'll have various divisions that teams and individuals can win. But do you see it in the faces of kids that I am going to the state championship? That's got to be a thrill for them. It wasn't a process of elimination. They get to go.
That's the beauty of it, is so many kids get to experience something at this level that it doesn't get to happen in any other sports. And along those lines, it's some of the kids you never think are going to be there.
From what I have seen, this is co-ed. You have boys and girls on the same team. How are your teams put together, Patrick?
The format for our teams is you can have between 16 and 24 shooters. You have to have at least 5 of each gender. So, and what we're seeing now is it's pretty evenly balanced, boys to girls on a team. But after that, we only use, of those up to 24 shooters, we only use the top 12 scores. The top 4 boys, the top 4 girls, and then the next 4 highest scores. So what that creates an opportunity for is you have the child on the team that he's at every practice or she's at every track practice. They try very hard. They do everything they can do. They're never going to be the star, but because they participate and try so hard, they get an opportunity. They're that 24th shooter. They still get to participate in a state tournament where they would never be considered in any other sport. We've had blind archers, and blind archers that actually shoot very well. We have archers in wheelchair for various reasons. Archers, we have a couple archers that actually shoot with their teeth, like Tim Farmer.
That brings up an interesting point about safety. I'm sure in the early days they were going to say, you're allowing kids to have bows, arrows? That's a hunting implement that could hurt somebody. But when done properly, it is safe. And sparing you all the analogies, I have heard it said that it is the safest sport in all of the school system, second only to bowling.
We are one of the safest, if not the safest sport, because of all the security precautions we take.
It is incredible, the step-by-step method that is used for archery. When to go to the line, when to get your bow, when to load your bow, when to shoot, when to go forward and get your arrows and score your arrows. It is military, almost.
Right. Even what to do when there's an emergency. We've got a protocol in place when something unexpected happens. There's a 5-whistle blast, and all the kids know exactly what to do when that happens.
And they know this. And a lot of the kids now have grown up with this and sort of expect, I got a shot at being on the archery team. And it becomes ingrained in them to sort of follow along. You sort of know the rules, you know the distances. You're finding that it's not new anymore to a lot of kids. They've seen it throughout several years now. For some people, and seniors in high school have been familiar with this sport now for 6 or 7 years. So it's nothing new.
You're right. And the ones that that aren't competing, they've watched their siblings compete for years now, and then when they step up, they already know everything. It becomes easier and easier and easier to manage a tournament now.
The score is, I mentioned bowling a while ago, and there is a similarity to bowling, is that the score goes to 300. And if you bowl a perfect game, you have bowled a 300. If you shoot the perfect score in archery, you have just shot a 300. Have you ever seen anybody shoot 300 at this level?
That's an interesting question. I have never seen that. The high score I've ever been witness to was a 298. But in, I believe it was late November, possibly early December, I don't know the exact date, we had a gentleman in Madison County shoot a 300 in a local fundraising tournament with 450 archers in it, a legitimate tournament. That does not count as the world record, because the world record has to be in a regional tournament or past, a regional, state, national, or world. But that is the first official 300 I've heard shot.
I've heard the joke that this guy was bowling, might as well just say he was shooting archery. Shot a 301. And said, no, there's no way, because the score only goes to 300. And the man says, have you ever heard of anybody shooting 300 and lose? That's the joke of the day. Talking to Patrick O'Connell, who is the Kentucky coordinator for the Archery in the Schools program. And we will have another half hour with him, and president of the national program, the National Archery in the Schools, that takes care of everything in the nation and several foreign countries. He will be joining us. His name is Roy Grimes. When we come back, stay with us. My name's Charlie Baglin, and you are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. I'm Charlie Baglin. Roy Grimes was one of the key people in making bows and arrows the rage in elementary, middle, and high school, and he is our guest just ahead. First up, our fishing report. If you were connected to a school in your community, then in all likelihood you know someone on the archery team. Regional tournaments are taking place now, with the state championship looming in March. Roy Grimes is our guest, along with Patrick O'Connell, with the National Archery in the Schools program. We'll talk about why it hits the bullseye after the break.
In high school, I got my license and my first license plate, a nature plate. Now that I'm in college, it's still my choice, because year by year, these plates save more and more. More rich forests, more clean flowing streams, more of what we all want to hold on to for our future. If it's the Wildcat, Cardinal, or the Butterfly plate, next time you renew, do like me. Say nature's finest and pick the plate that keeps our bluegrass green.
Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. You see it as a contribution option when you prepare your state tax return. But you also see it as songbirds and wildflowers. You can see it in clear flowing streams. Sometimes it's so secluded you may never see it at all. But if you only see it on your PC as you prepare your taxes, that's good too. Google it and see the difference this fund makes. Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund, the natural tax shelter.
You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. I'm Charlie Baglin. And on the phone with me, along with our in-studio guest, who is Patrick O'Connell, the Kentucky coordinator for the National Archery in the Schools program, is the president of the National Archery in the Schools program. This is nationwide. His name is Roy Grimes. Roy, welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm glad to be here.
Is it fair to say that you are the president, but in sports terminology, could we just as well say you're sort of like the commissioner of the National Archery in the School program? Does that put it in some perspective, maybe, for sports enthusiasts?
Yeah, if that doesn't sound too pretentious, that will work.
All right, but we'll call you, I'm just going to call you Roy, but just,
okay. You
have done a marvelous thing, and I say you personally, because you were there at the earliest days of what we now know as archery in the schools that has touched the lives of thousands around the globe. So
yeah, Charlie, I was in the office when Tom Bennett, then Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife, walked in and said, "Hey, we've got to get shooting to be more cool among students." And What can we do? Can we get archery to become a team sport? So, yep, I happened to be in Tom's view when he had that idea, and so I have the privilege of working on this program all these years.
And it's not like you were looking for something to do at that time, because I know that we had a little project here in Kentucky called elk restoration. You kind of had that on your plate too.
Yeah, there's always a lot going on and a lot of staff to work with, and so we weren't looking for something to do, but certainly we had a big problem. We needed to try to increase the shooter participation because we'd been losing 17 customers to Fish and Wildlife every day for 15 years, and we couldn't continue having that kind of decline in licensed buyers and expect to be able to manage bluebirds, rabbits, and this brand new elk herd that we had created.
Back to the topic of archery. Here it is. We're looking towards another tournament season, and there's something new in the archery program this year. And in Kentucky, the Kentucky High School Athletic Association is now a participant in this, where it hasn't been in prior years. Patrick, Roy, one of you speak to what this means now for how far archery has come.
Patrick, if I could, I'll talk a little bit about how long we've been waiting for and hoping for this to take place. Since the very beginning of NASP, we were hoping that archery would become an official high school sport, so the kids that like to shoot, that enjoyed archery, would have a very high-profile sport to participate in. And we're so glad that we didn't get our wish 11 years ago, because, frankly, there were a lot of things we didn't have figured out yet. But over the years, we've made sure that the Kentucky High School Athletic Association has been familiar with what we're doing in Kentucky with developing the sport of archery, how popular it was. And then they conducted a survey last year to find out how many of their high school athletic directors would like to see archery become a sport or a sport activity. And they received a very positive response, so positive that they decided that they would make archery an official sport activity in Kentucky to sanction it in high schools.
You're talking sport activity, and for anyone who may not know, what is another sport activity versus basketball, football? What are sport activities?
Okay, it's a brand new category. So sports, of course, are the football, basketball, baseball, those kinds of sports. And they have a lot of regulation. They have closed seasons. They are restricted to how many events they can participate in, how often they can have contact with their coach, those kinds of things. A sport activity is pretty new. And HSAA created this category for the new sport activities of bass fishing, archery, bowling, and cheer. And they wanted a sport activity so those things could function in Kentucky without as many regulations attached to them to maximize student participation. And in NASP, that was very important. If they sanctioned archery as a pure sport and said that you can only shoot in NASP-style competitions and you can only shoot in so many per year, that would have devastated the program here, because so many kids shoot all year long and shoot in state and regional and fundraising tournaments, national and world. If it had been a sport, there wouldn't have been as much flexibility to do that. So they made it a sport activity, which is a blessing to us all.
When you have next month, Patrick, the state championship, part of those awards are going to be coming from the Kentucky High School Athletic Association. Is that right?
That's correct. The NASP tournament portion will pretty much function exactly as it always has. We will just have an additional component now of the Kentucky High School Athletic Association awards to offer during our award ceremony for the schools that comply to the regulations.
So this will be a first, so good luck with that to, I guess, all the high school. Now the middle school, the elementary students, that will give them something to look forward to. They'll hear those names mentioned when they win with the high school athletic. That'll be another award that they can say, hey, maybe next year when I'm in high school, maybe I can get that. Maybe that'll be me.
It's a letter sport now. They'll be able to earn jackets, and Patrick could attest to this better than I, but in Kentucky, we're finally hearing from schools that had stayed out of NASP all these years, all these 10 years, but are now wanting in because they have a chance to compete on another level.
How many? There are 120 counties in Kentucky. How many of those counties are still without the sport activity, without NASP? Is it in all 120 counties?
I don't know. If it's not, and it's in almost all of them at that point. So,
Some of the Charlie, some of the slowest counties, or the last counties to get in the program, were in extreme southwestern Kentucky. But I think Patrick's right that the vast majority are in the program now.
Now, you are involved on not just the national level, but the global level, the horizons out there. Where, in which countries beyond the United States do we find the National Archery in the Schools program?
We're in 47 of the 50 states now. We're still missing Vermont, Rhode Island, and Delaware. But we're also in 5 Canadian provinces, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. And the Yukon Territories joined the program about 2 weeks ago. And they only have 15 schools and 33,000 people in the entire territory. We also have Australia, New Zealand. We have 5 countries in Africa. South Africa was the first, and we have a wonderful fellow there who's planting arrows all over that continent now. So 5 countries in Africa. And then 3 weeks ago, Mongolia, the country of Mongolia, which is north of China, joined NASP. And archery is their national sport, and their Olympic Archery Committee decided that it wanted to adopt NASP and help spread it through the schools in that new country.
Where are the horizons? Where next?
I think Canada is going to get more heavily involved. We're getting a lot of queries right now from Manitoba and Ontario. As you know, Charlie, you and I have talked about this before. We've heard from people in more than 35 countries that would like for archery to be taught in their schools like it is here. But we aren't in all those countries because before we can get those schools involved, we have to have an organization in England, for example, that will agree to run the program like Patrick does for Fish and Wildlife here in Kentucky. And in most of those countries, they've not reached that level of organization yet.
There's something about a school kid being involved in archery where maybe he or she didn't get on the team they wanted to be on. Maybe they couldn't have gotten on the football team, but yet they're a part of archery and they are enthused, they are excited, they are engaged, and they are in school, they're doing well, they feel like they are a part of something. I'm wondering if that is the same reception that you are finding students give this archery program around the nation. Is it similar?
I think it's exactly the same, Charlie. If one thing I learned, before NASP, I wasn't a very well-traveled person. You know, if I'd been into 5 counties, that was a big deal. But I've been able to go to a lot of places, training new teachers and trainers so that they can train their students. And I've found that kids are pretty much the same everywhere. They are enamored of the flight of the arrow. They think it's just great. They think it's a lot of fun. And that's everywhere we go.
Even in 5 countries in Africa, Australia, Mongolia, you'll find the same smile on the students' faces as you will here.
Oh yeah, we've got video that we took in Africa of young kids dancing all the way to the target butt, and they just love it because they don't have to be. They can be, but they don't have to be tall, strong, fast, or pretty to have success in archery. Everybody can do it, and all will enjoy it.
Patrick has an interesting story about a girl that it touched me when we were at break. Patrick, would you mind to tell that story again of that girl who won that tournament that just turned her life all the way around?
Sure. I was at a regional tournament probably 4 years ago, I guess, and there's this little red-headed middle school girl who was just your average kid. She probably wasn't going to be prom queen. She probably wasn't going to be valedictorian. But on that day, she outshot every other girl in that entire region. She was the best. She was a little 8th grade girl at the time, I think, and she beat the high school kids. She beat everybody. And to see the expression on her face at the award ceremony when she was getting that trophy and everybody was cheering for her was priceless. And that's why I do NASP, because it impacts tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids in that same way.
Archery on target for life, and it sounds like you've touched one with that little redhead girl. Roy, Patrick, we're up against the clock in this segment, but when we come back, I want to ask about the World Tournament, the National Tournament, and, Roy, something that's new this year that you called the All-Star Championship. Looking forward to hearing more of that. Just in 10 seconds or less, where is that going to be held, the All-Star Championship?
It's going to be 3 hours north of Johannesburg, South Africa.
That's just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah, 4,000 miles. Times 2.
4,000 miles. We're talking with the president of the National Association of the School Program, Roy Grimes, and the Kentucky director of the Kentucky National Association of School. That's sort of a mouthful, but it's the Kentucky chapter of this. Is there a way that you normally say that?
We just call it Kentucky NASP, a subunit of the worldwide program.
His name is Patrick O'Connell. We will be back with more. My name is Charlie Baglin on Kentucky Afield Radio. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. I'm Charlie Baglin in the studio with Patrick O'Connell, who runs the State Archery in the Schools program, and on the telephone from his office is Roy Grimes, who is in charge of NASP pretty much everywhere else around the nation and the globe. This is tournament season. We're starting in Kentucky nonetheless. We're doing regionals as we speak. The state championship is coming up in March in Louisville, and the national, world, and the all-star championships. Give us the word on each of those that are coming up.
Okay. Well, the very first NASP tournament was held in Kentucky on a Saturday in July in 2002 at part of the Bluegrass State Games. We only had 40 kids come to that tournament. Now the state tournaments in Kentucky entertain almost 3,000 kids, with another almost 8,000 goes through Patrick's regional tournaments. Worldwide, there are about 40 state and provincial tournaments, and we have a national tournament that it takes place in Louisville, Kentucky. And then we have a world tournament that's been in Orlando at Disney World the last 4 years in October. This year, actually, Charlie, 43,000 students went through these state, national, and world tournaments. A few 100,000 actually tried out for teams in order to make those squads that went on to their regional, state, national, and world tournaments. So some big news for next year. The national is still going to be in Louisville. In fact, we've signed a contract. The national tournament will be in Louisville, Kentucky at the fairgrounds, indoors there, for through 2016. And we build, as you well know, the largest archery range on the planet. It's 1,350 feet long. It takes 200 volunteers to operate that range. And we set a Guinness World Record in May of 2012 when 7,804 students participated. By the way, it's ironic to me that we took that record from the country of Mongolia, which I listed in your last section as the newest country to join our program.
And you eclipsed that. I think they may be out to get you, Roy. I was in Kroger the other day, and I saw the Guinness World Record sitting there, and I tried to find it. I guess it's not wound up in paperback yet, but...
Well, as soon as you reported that you weren't seeing it in there, we contacted Guinness and found out that they have about 60,000 records, world records, and only 4,000 of them make that book. So I reckon our record wasn't as great as eating a bunch of hot dogs or pie, and so it didn't make the book yet.
You're moving the World Championship. Patrick, I'm wanting you to chime in here somewhere that Kentucky factors into all of these championships prominently.
I think Kentucky's the best, and I hope they always are going to be the best, but every year we're giving more and more awards away to the other states because they're catching up with us. They're learning the coaching techniques and everything, and they work just as hard as we do. So, and to be honest, I don't mind sharing. If they earn it, they should be there.
If they earn it, they should be there. And in years past, the World Championship has been at Disney World.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I'll say something else if I could about those who's winning all those tournaments. This year at the World Tournament at Disney World in October, one of the South African people, young people, won a trophy, and I think the Kentucky crowd cheered the loudest for a person from a new country to finally break into the medal round. So that was very exciting to see that happen. But yeah, the World has been in Orlando for 4 years. It went from 600 and some kids. It grew to about 1,300. We had a lot of fun there. A lot of people would love to see us go back. They were taking vacations. They were seeing the ocean for the first time in their young lives. So we decided we needed to move it to a little more central U.S. location to see if we could provide the opportunity for kids that weren't doing it. In NASP, Charlie, we often think about, we're tickled to death that more than 11,000 schools are in this program, but we have our eye on the kids that go to the 103,000 schools that aren't enjoying archery. And the same thing in our tournaments. If we can get 3,000 kids to St. Louis to participate in the World, that's a couple of thousand more than we're having fun down in Orlando. So we're going to give St. Louis a try. June the 29th and 30th, and the kids are going to have their tournament on the same field that the St. Louis Rams play football on, and that's the Edward Jones Dome.
That's going to be a thrill. When is the All-Star Championship?
A month and a week after we do the World Tournament, we're inviting the all-nation teams. The U.S., we established our first All-American team this past May, and that's established at our national tournament. Canada will do the same thing, so will the other countries. We're going to invite those all-nation teams, up to 24 kids per team, to go to Johannesburg, and that's going to be the week of August the 5th. Then they're going to travel by bus 3 hours north. And in Africa, it's cool. It gets warmer as you go north because we're below the equator there. But we'll go north 3 hours to a wildlife ranch with chalets and cabins, and there'll be a huge tent erected, and the kids are going to shoot NASP-style archery for 2 days. They're going to shoot flights, and they're going to be round-robin competitions and brackets like you see in basketball tournaments to anoint all-star champions of the all-nation teams.
That sounds like a thrill and a half. For anybody that wants to know more about NASP, either one of you, where do they go? What's the website?
National or world, they'll go to the archeryintheschools.org.
Right. In Kentucky, you just go to fw.ky.gov.
And I bet you could Google NASP and probably all sorts of things would come up.
Hey, Charlie, I think in about another month or so, with this kind of success, with these kids and all these teachers doing this, that you Google fun and NASP is going to come up.
I like that. This is a non-profit enterprise, non-profit project. If anybody wants to get a part, where do their dollars go? How can they give you their dollars?
People can go to our website, and there's a donate link there where they can be anywhere from a platinum medal level sponsor all the way down to bronze, and they can even be other levels of sponsorship. When we get sponsors, most of the money for those sponsorship goes into equipment grants to help new schools get in NASP. It costs once a teacher is trained in NASP, it costs about $3,000 to equip a school to teach archery as part of the school curriculum, usually physical education class, but sometimes other classes. And that's a barrier to an awful lot of schools coming up with that $3,000. So if folks want to help out, that's the best way they can help right there. You two gentlemen have taken the game of bows and arrows to all new heights, and thousands of kids around the globe appreciate what you have done. Patrick, thank you. Mr. Grimes, thank you so much for being a part of Kentucky Afield Radio. Just one question before we go. Do either one of you text and drive? I'm hoping the answer is no.
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 Thank you, gentlemen. That's what I like to hear. I have an interview sitting here on tape from the Kentucky High School Athletic Association where I talked to one of their deputy commissioners about their newfound involvement with NASP. I got to squeeze that into a show very soon. Meanwhile, we are out of time. I'm Charlie Baglin, and we will go inside outdoors again in 1 week right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.